me introduce our guest. So, welcome everybody. This is, oh my gosh, what is it doing? It almost froze for a second. Okay, we're okay. This is Dr. Kate Minizzi. She holds a PhD in classical archaeology from the Department of Ancient Mediterranean and Near Eastern Studies at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, BC. She has a master's degree in Egyptian archaeology from UCL and one in history of art and archaeology from the Institute of Fine Arts at NYU. She has been working as a field archaeologist for more than a decade, and since 2015, she is a senior member of the NYU Uni-Me archaeological expedition in, here we go, Selinunte? Ooh.
Selinunte, close enough. That was
Selinunte, okay. Her main research interests are Archaic period connectivity and local responses to globalization in the Mediterranean. She has also been a gamer for more than 2 decades, and since 2013 has been exploring how video games can represent and misrepresent both archaeology as a field and antiquity itself. From 2020, she has been participating in a growing number of panels and conferences on archaeogaming and reception of antiquity in video games as a member of the Archaeogaming Collective, and has been streaming weekly on Twitch as Archaeogaming Live Events Coordinator for the Save Ancient Studies Alliance, aka SASA, who we know very well. So everybody give a warm welcome to Dr. Kate.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me. As you can see, I am Oz the Great and Powerful tonight, so I hope my audio and video are like at least one between audio and video is better. Yes. Hello. I see the chat.
Yes,
I
and
monitor the chat.
Kate can read the chat. So I love this because this is I knew about you and I knew all the stuff you did. But also I went to UCL, if you didn't know that about me, for a semester abroad. Is where I went to the Institute of Archaeology, and then I went and did my field school in Italy. So it's like lots of things getting tied between, which I just love.
Indeed.
Okay. I also realized one thing I'm going to add, because we haven't had my stream avatars in existence when we had the last oh no, wait, that's not the right thing. We never had stream avatars when we did our last what's it called? Also, I might be actually, you know what? I probably know why the audio is so bad. Sorry guys, no stream avatars tonight. We're gonna disconnect that. That's probably why. Sorry. No distractions. Alrighty, so if you are ready to go, we can get started. Again, you guys can ask questions all throughout. I'll be going through all the questions, and you are more than welcome to ask questions throughout, and then we'll do a little Q&A and chat at the very end. So, So I gotta do this, and then I gotta share my screen with you so that you can see this.
There's a lot of screens in front of me right now.
There are a lot of screens. Window. This. Share.
Okay, yes, excellent. I am
back.
almost yes, I am seeing my PowerPoint. Excellent,
Okay.
excellent.
All right, it's actually doing something
All
weird.
right.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
It's making you tiny for some reason. on the
I'm
screen.
fine with that. I mean, we know that my camera is going to be like sleeper quality, so that's fine.
That is also true.
It may actually work better.
All right, let me just. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I know what I'm gonna do. I'm going to share my screen with you before I put the PowerPoint in large mode, because that might help. Now, why is it doing this to me? You know, everyone loves. We love the technical difficulties.
We met before. We met to have a tech test, and everything seemed to be working. Of course, now it doesn't.
I know. Of course, now it doesn't. No, we've had so many worse. We've had so many worse times with this. Okay, there we go. It just wasn't popping up. Okay, so.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, I'm switching this around. For some reason, they think my monitor is bigger. Okay, what we're gonna do is guest star. I'm just gonna make you much bigger. We're just gonna work this out. Alrighty. I usually this is honestly not my fault though, because I had this all set up, but Twitch keeps wanting to upgrade and change it, and I had it all set up in my weird way, and now it's not working. So
I know. Yeah,
that's okay. Alrighty.
but it's fine.
It's fine.
We will deal. Okay. Can I?
Yes,
Are we
absolutely.
set up? Okay.
Start.
Yes. So. Okay. Yeah. Well. Thank you for having me. And thank you for wanting to talk about this somewhat weird topic. This is one of the few times I get to be serious on Twitch, so I'm very looking forward to this. Serious, conditions apply, but I get to talk about my research, like my field research. So this was my PhD dissertation that took 7 years to complete, with a pandemic in the meantime. So it was, it started as, serious on Twitch,
Serious?
never. This dissertation was the third element in my relationship for the longest time, right? I've been writing this dissertation for almost as long as I've been dating my wife. It was me, her, and my spreadsheet, right? But this is also like the combination of all my previous degrees, which is a lot of fun. And it actually started with a bull in a temple, because when I joined the Salinunte excavation in 2015, I was told that in 2012 they had found the Egyptian amulet of a bull in a Greek temple, and it's a very old Greek temple. It was built around 580, 570 BC, and I was like, I wonder if there are other objects like that in Sicily. Turns out there are more than 400 of those.
Wow.
And turns out nobody had made a comprehensive study, had written a comprehensive study about them since 1973, and nobody has still done that in English, which is why I'm trying to get this published. So this was my, my contribution to the field. So I think we can go to the first slide, like the first non-title slide now, because I'm having, like I put words in there. I said Aegyptica, I said glocalization. So I think that the first slide should be what are Aegyptica. I'm confident I will see the other slide. If not, I can just recite it by,
Okay.
like, I can just recite it.
Can you see that?
No, but
Okay.
I know what the second slide is. Don't
Okay.
worry.
All right.
I got this.
Okay. It has switched
Yeah.
on my screen and I think on the stream.
Oh,
but
don't
I
worry
guess-
about it. I have it open on the side on my own screen, so
Okay.
I'm actually following along.
Perfect.
With that. So what are Aegyptica? So Aegyptica is an umbrella term, a very bad umbrella term, but there's something to be said about umbrella terms that are problematic but useful. That indicates a whole range of objects of Egyptian origin, or should I say the models of which are of Egyptian origin, found generally around the Mediterranean. No scholars agree on which types of objects are comprised under this umbrella term. The ones that I've chosen are the ones that are very clearly of Egyptian origin, so amulets, and we will see what kind of amulets, figurines, scarabs, certain types of vessels, and of course, ushabtis. There are funerary figures, right? So the term Aegyptica is of course questionable because it's Latin, but it's the Latin version of a Greek name that means things made in the Egyptian manner. But we are giving preeminence to the origin of this stuff, but not all of these was probably produced in Egypt, so it is a problematic term. But rather than saying Egyptian and Egyptianizing or Egyptian-looking objects, I just used one term and I called them Aegyptica. And those are photos that I took myself of objects around Sicily.
So cool.
Yeah. I was left alone in a museum room with several rings with scarabs on them. I will not confirm nor deny that I was tempted to try them on. I will not confirm nor deny. So we have more than 400 of these objects. You can get the third slide, which is the research questions. So my my research questions are archaeological and social and anthropological, because I wanted to figure out how did this object fit into the social, cultural, and political changes during the Archaic period, because these objects don't exist in a vacuum, right? They are used by people, and the people are using them for their own purposes. So the second question is, how can the use of these objects help us to better understand how the inhabitants of Sicily were reacting to pan-Mediterranean trends? Because by tracing how these objects are used, and this is a big spoiler, we can see in what kind of trends the people of Sicily were participating. And these trends all included the Aegyptica, right? Big spoiler. And then the third one, which is the bigger question, is how were the local agents, which means the inhabitants of Sicily, shape their responses to global trends through material culture? Because the Archaic Mediterranean is a globalized period. And so globalization has several features. One of them is most regions are influenced by the same trends, but every region responds to the trends in different ways. This is what we mean by glocalization. So it is the local part of globalization.
Okay.
Right? Those
I had to look it up when I saw it. I was like, I've never really heard that word that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's a terrible buzzword, but it works, right? Just like Aegyptica is imperfect, but it works.
Yeah.
Glocalization is, yes, it's a buzzword, but it works, right? It's the local response to global phenomena. Very quickly. So to give you an idea of like how global we are talking, if you go to slide number 4, which is the map.
Woo! Okay.
Yeah, this is the usual map of like, so 8th to early 5th century Mediterranean is a mess of foundations. I'm not going to call them colonies, because colony is a very charged word in both languages, in Italian and in English and in any other language. These are foundations. So people from the Phoenician cities, from Greek cities, from Etruscan cities too, in minor ways, but they still do it. Go around to found new cities abroad. The whys are various: lack of land, social instability, political instability, wanting to open new trading routes. At this point, the old Bronze Age trading routes have been reopened and, revamped, so people are going around. And Sicily is, of course, at the center of this whole thing. So if you go to slide number 5.
One question before you move
Sicily.
on.
Yes.
Because I don't speak Italian, can you define what the red, yellow, and gray cities on this are?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I think this is German, even.
I was gonna say. I was looking at it and I was like, I don't know what language.
Yeah, it is German. So no, sorry about that. So red is Greek.
Okay.
Yellow is Phoenician. And the other one, I want to say it's Etruscan.
Okay. Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
There's people everywhere. Yeah. And this is a very simplified map.
Oh yeah, the Etruscans.
Extremely
they're up here.
Yeah.
And
And every most of these cities also found cities on their own. So we have like sub colonies, sub apoikiai.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a mess. But like if we go to Sicily, of course, Sicily is not empty, right? There are at least 3 different, we're going to say ethne, with the understanding that is not a good word to use.
Yeah.
And we don't know what these people call themselves, but the Greeks call them Elimoi, which are the ones that live on the mountains. They are like the mountaintop people, and they're buddy with the Phoenicians. Sicanoi, which are the ones more in the center of Sicily. They seem to not have been as warrior-like as others, but they control the big rivers and the land, around the rivers. And then the Siciloi, or Sicils, who are actually the warlords of the times, right? We are told that these people fight, and their tombs have a lot of big spears, right? Of course, all of these people are there, and then we add to the mix the Phoenicians and the Greeks, right? So it's a big mixing. Of course, when the Phoenicians and the Greeks arrive, they are fewer than the indigenous people, so they have to deal with them, not always in a colonialistic way. Most of the times they have to actually ask permission to settle, or they settle places that are not settled by the indigenous people, right? Because we need to be aware not to project backwards things that we know from colonization, which is also why I don't like to use the word colony, right?
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. It's hard to
is-
use words that we now use so heavily on an ancient culture where, like, yeah, some of these ancient cultures we have lots of writings and we have lots of stuff, but like, I always hate putting assumptions on, like, I'm a big user of like the word probably, maybe, and all of those,
Yeah.
because I really hate putting
Plausibly.
like I really
Yeah.
hate putting
I
that
use
concrete.
plausibly a lot.
Yeah, I am
Yeah.
always just like,
Like-
yeah, maybe. Like I always am trying to never be exact, because the people that are exact are the ones that people then ask, what's going on? Like, yeah, like what are you talking about? I'm like, no, just say. Yeah, I hate exactness in this field, because it's just usually will come back and bite us in the butt.
It will, and especially if we use politically charged, well, words that
also-
are now politically charged,
Yes.
it is a problem, because then the word itself projects an image that is probably not what was happening on the
Yeah.
ground,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Which is the big issues with the Archaic period.
Yeah,
So no, my family, my mom's family is from Montedoro, which is in the province of Caltanissetta, smack
love
in the
it.
middle of of Sicily. My dad's family is from the other side of the Strait of Messina. He's from Reggio Calabria. He's one of those Dorians, you know, from Region. So sorry. So we go to slide number 6. More maps,
Yes.
right? Just to give you an idea of how diffused these things are. There are 429 total objects that I was able to track down. I'm telling you that many more are lost in museums. And actually, some of these 429 are lost in museums.
Yes. No,
I'm just saying.
This is the other thing that's amazing, is that like we did such similar, like, I can tell we already have a very similar mind, because like I did mine on the dogs of ancient Egypt, and it's just a giant Excel spreadsheet with 510 dogs that just keeps on multiplying. But you're right, there are some that are totally lost in museums. And I saw some when I was in Egypt, I saw some at the Cairo Museum, and I took all these photos, and now I have to go back and cross-reference, because I might have found them, or I
Yes.
might have found totally new ones. I don't know. I gotta
Yeah.
figure it out.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Oh my God, I went to a museum, and I'm not gonna name and shame, and I told them, hey, I know that you have 20 scarabs from this excavation. And they were like, oh, we do? And I was like, you should know.
You should
You
know.
should know that you have
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know. So, turns out they didn't have them. I mean, maybe they did, but they
Maybe
didn't know
at
where they
one point.
were.
Yeah. No.
Like, yeah, I know they were brought there.
I worked at the Brooklyn Museum as an intern for a year, and one of my main jobs when I was really bored was scanning. Well, not even really bored, honestly. It was when my literal boss was on furlough and I had nothing else to do because I had to do stuff. I was scanning 100-year-old slides of scarabs. Just,
Jesus.
or not even slides, actually. They were photographs, and I think they were part of the Petrie collection or something. And I was just like,
Oh, yeah,
I don't know
checks
if I
out.
can. I don't know if I
Scarabs
can.
in our museum? In this
Yeah.
economy?
In this economy, I don't even know how. Truly, I wish I had a better collections internship, because I think sitting there scanning scarabs totally turned me off of ever working in collections in a museum.
Fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to go around Sicily and take photos of most of these objects.
Well, yeah, that's
Because I couldn't access the publications and things, so I just went. I was like, yeah, let's just. So it was actually like I got a fellowship for it,
Perfect.
and I took my parents. It was a road trip. It was a family road trip. We went to see the family. You know,
I love that so much.
It had to be, and this was right before the pandemic. This was January 2020.
Oh, wow, no way.
Yeah, we got it real close, and I am a lousy seer, but I was like, something's off, so I'm gonna come back like a few days earlier, spend some more days with my parents, and then fly back to the US. And wouldn't you know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It was a moment. It was a moment. Yes.
Yeah.
Digitization is super important and super
Very
tedious,
important.
but it's very important. One of the reasons why I want to publish my research is so that nobody else will ever have to go through what I went through with this shit.
yeah. Yeah.
Like
Agreed.
I'm doing people a favor, right? Yeah, I'm tooting my own horn. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
But
No,
but, like,
it's
as you can see from this, so many stupid objects.
yeah.
So many stupid objects, and like, so I've divided between the ones that have information for which we have information about the context and the ones for which we don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
For, as you know, for ancient like 1800s archaeology, many of the times things are not recorded. So these things show up in collections and we don't have the context. So I cannot use them for my analysis, but I can use them for, they fit with the general types and time period. So I cannot use them for the numbers or the social analysis, but I can still say these things exist and they look like this, right?
Absolutely.
The biggest problem is the sanctuary of Erice, which is an incredible sanctuary. It's an Elenian sanctuary that was also used by everyone around. It was like a seafaring sanctuary on top of a black mountain. It's incredible.
Cool. Very cool.
They have fantastic scarabs, zero context. None of them. They have the only hard scarab found in Sicily, and it was a high school student who found it in a fucking grotto underneath the sanctuary. And it's like, yeah.
Wild.
So,
Wild.
I know, and that's Italy, right? So unfortunately, I could not use those, but I still had to mention them.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
To add to the thing. So if we go to slide number 7, this is the chronological diffusion. So in 8th and 7th and 8th to 7th century BC, we only have them in 3 places. Then 7th and 6th, there's more, and then 6th, it's just a boom, right? It's a big diffusion. The interesting thing about the first map is that only one of those places is Greek.
Ooh.
Only Siracusa is a Greek place. Villas
Okay.
Bundo is actually a Sikol settlement. And these very fancy scarabs mounted on gold and silver rings are found in the tombs of the local warlords, right? I'm gonna call them warlords, like with the understanding that I'm calling them that because they have a lot of weapons in their tombs.
Yeah.
Not because I'm calling them primitive, but like these people are warriors.
Militaristic. Military guys.
Right?
Yeah.
Militaristic. Yeah. It's a very military. Well, the elite is very militaristic, right?
Yeah.
And they have these in their tombs alongside imported Greek pottery, Euboean pottery.
Okay.
And some of these are identical to the ones found in the site of Pithecusae, which is the first Greek foundation in Italy, which is founded like 2 decades before. So possibly same trade route, right? It's with the same kind of stuff. Siracusa, absolutely not Euboean stuff because Siracusa is Corinthian, so they absolutely refuse to deal with the Euboean, and the scarabs are probably from Rhodes or from Egypt, but they're not with Euboean pottery.
Got it.
And the one in Monte Finestrelle may have gone there from the other way, right? Because that's in Phoenician territory. So that may have come through the Phoenicians.
Got it.
Then in 7th and 6th century, and 6th and 6th to 5th century BCE, they expand more, and we find them mostly in Greek settlements. But that's also because the Greeks are expanding with war, like they're wiping down everyone else and taking more and more territory. But it is interesting that the first time we see these objects is actually non-Greek cities, right? Because
that is very interesting.
Back then, the assumption was that either the Greeks and the Phoenicians had brought them as like trinkets, like the first European colonizers had brought
beads,
things that had no value, right, to exchange with the barbaric, colonized. But actually, no, these are rich people who want these things, and these things are of excellent quality, which should tell us something, right?
Yeah.
Because these are not trinkets. I have a whole beef with the trinkets, but that comes later. So if we go to slide number 8, I have mapped the number of contexts and number of objects total in the time period, and we can see 2 big peaks. One is the 7th century, and one is the 6th century. Now, the 7th century is when there is a new kind of international elite around the Mediterranean, and a new kind of international elite network in which rich people, wealthy people actually, from different places can buy in their way into this, high society by owning and displaying the right kinds of objects. And wouldn't you know it, the Aegyptica are part of this set.
If you don't mind pausing for 30 seconds,
yes.
I have an ad running. So
please
take a drink. Take a drink.
Yeah.
Take a break.
I will hydrate.
Okay, almost done.
Don't worry.
Yeah. All right. I think it should be done now. Okay. Back in.
Okay. So 7th century, there is a buy-in in society by having the right kind of objects to display, not just imported, but also local, right? So we are merging two different types of display. The 6th century BCE has more variety in terms of types being used in all sorts of contexts and not just by wealthy people. But the 6th century BCE is when the mass factories of these objects open in Egypt. It means there is a market for them, right? It means that people want this stuff. People in Egypt see that there is coin to be made, and they open actual mass factories in Naucratis and in Memphis probably.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and it's interesting to see that like the number of contexts and number of objects actually follow the same pattern, because it's not a given, right? Like it would make sense that they would, but it's not a given. And then the centuries start only from the 7th century BCE, but in the Eastern Mediterranean, it was an old story. So if you give me the next slide, 1 second, I'm gonna have to make it a little bigger on my end. Okay.
No problem.
There we go. So this is how the objects are divided between contexts in various centuries. My charts look much better right now. This one is complicated, but
I'm getting it. Yeah.
Right. So I'm gonna read it out for you. So at the beginning, we only find these objects in tombs. Easy as that, right? And one in a house. The one in Monte Finestrelle is in a house, but everything else is in tombs. The 7th century, we start seeing sanctuaries, which is something we don't see in the 8th century BCE. And then from the 7th century onwards, it's, mostly everywhere. But if you look at the kind of objects, we start having more variety from the end of the 7th and beginning of 6th century BCE. Before that, we have the occasional figurine, the occasional vessel, but it's mostly scarabs. Then afterwards, we see a lot of variety. Like if you look at the funerary context in the 6th century BCE, that's the biggest distribution of types that we have, right?
Yeah,
and then 6th to 5th century BCE, you may think that there are way more amulets than objects, but that is actually a problem with the bar chart, because there is an outlier. That is a tomb in Palermo, tomb 63 in Palermo. That is a very small child. It's such a pitiful tomb. This baby was small, like a toddler, but he's covered in amulets. His parents were fucking rich. He's covered in amulets. He has a beautiful necklace with 16 amulets and beads and pearls and other things. This baby was tiny. Like if you see the remains of the bones, like your heart shrinks. But that's the outlier. Like he's the outlier. So he was, he was rich. But that's why that.
Were they all Egyptian, or was a mixture of stuff?
It was mostly Egyptian, but also Phoenician, which makes sense because Palermo is a Phoenician city. So it was probably a small Phoenician boy.
That's just so interesting, right? That they would mix them. That they would mix Egyptian, I could see it being like all Egyptian, but like having that mixture is very interesting too.
But thank you for pointing that out, because that's one of the questions, right? Are these things really Egyptians for the Phoenicians? Because they've been using them since the 10th century BC.
Yeah.
Do they even consider them Egyptian at that point, right?
That's a very good question.
Or have they just entered their tradition? They're like, yeah, these are our amulets. I mean, we've used them, for the longest time. So clearly these are amulets.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Like, there's so many of those things, like even the goddess Isis, when she gets worshipped outside of Egypt, like, is she even Egyptian anymore? Like,
right.
She's always depicted as like essentially, like, it's depicted in the Greek or the Roman style or whatever, and it's just like she's got some things, but they don't even follow a lot of like she has like a moon on her head, which like she never had in Egypt. So it's just like, at what point did they suddenly say she's ours now? She's not Egyptian. Like, it's so
exactly.
It's a very interesting
like,
concept to think of.
Right, and like does there need to be a line?
Sorry, Baha. The American Coca-Cola
Like
Santa Claus. I mean,
yes.
It is it's the I hate to say it, Baha. You're exactly the same thing. It's the taking of like both. There's lots of different versions of Santa Claus, but taking of the literal Saint Nicholas and that legend, and then like Sinterklaas, and then some of the stuff that's like in German lore and stuff, and then suddenly turning it into the commercialized Santa Claus. Like, when do we claim that he's not coming from anywhere else and he's ours? It's the same exact thing. You're 100% right, Baha.
Unacceptable condition.
Baha!
Unacceptable.
Dapper historian plays the unacceptable. He's not accepting it.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. It was so loud. I had it way too high up in my headphones. But yeah, it
wouldn't be the loudest thing.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's truly like, when can somebody, and this is very much, stop me for quoting Hamilton, but it's like, who can tell this history? Like, who lives, who dies, who tells our story? Because it's like, you can easily, pretty much anybody can just tell a history story and claim it as their own, and this has been something that's been going on obviously since ancient times. Like, it's wild. It's wild to think about.
Right? And it's just so interesting. And even for the Greeks, there is the big question of, do they, well, first of all, do they care where this stuff comes from, or it's the Egyptian vibe? Right? I'm spoiling like the bigger question.
I was gonna say, the Egyptomania. Like, whenever I give my lecture on Egyptomania, I always say, technically the Greeks were like the first Egyptomaniacs. They were people who like loved Egypt, and they started talking about Egypt, and then the Romans are like kind of half and half, but then you get Hadrian, who like,
I mean,
his
Hadrian
lover
had a lot of issues.
He had a lot of issues, but his lover dies in the Nile, and I'm just gonna be like, I'm just gonna now make my dead lover into an Egyptian god, and I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like it's just people don't think about it that way, but yeah, like these ancient cultures who were just after Egypt is kind of falling apart and kind of falling down, like they loved Egypt in a way, but it's like, do they really see it as Egypt? Like, do they?
Right?
Yeah.
Is it the idea of Egypt? Is it the vibe of Egypt?
Yeah, that's very
questions. No, this is a big spoiler. So wait. So let's go back to serious things, lol.
Serious.
So slide number 10. Yeah. Religious context, right?
Yes.
Yes, it does sound on brand for Hadrian, though. Yeah, I mean, honestly,
it's one of my favorite.
Right?
I know very little about Roman history, but man, Hadrian. Like, I was very upset when I was in Italy and Hadrian's Villa was closed, like, under renovation, because I was like, hate to say it, that was one of my top places to see, because I wanted to see that really weird bedroom that's in the middle of, like, a lake, and I'm like, I wanted to see that, because this guy was weird.
Surrounded by statues of naked men.
Yes! I wanted to see it.
Question to, so you know the TikTok trend of, like, the orange? Like, oh, would you, right,
Yes.
No, we are doing the Hadrian thing. Would you declare me a god if I drowned under fishy circumstances during a festival of Osiris?
Would you name multiple cities after me? Yes.
After me?
Like,
would you create a new statuary type after me if I died under nefarious circumstances?
Oh my god, this needs to actually be a TikTok trend. Yeah. Yes.
My wife was wildly confused and asked me what was I talking about. I was like, well, let me tell you. Anyway.
the orange trend.
Yeah, it's not, well, you know.
What's the minimum you can do for your loved one? You can either peel an orange for them if they ask, or you can deify them.
Or you can
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. There's no middle ground there.
No middle ground. No,
it's love is a spectrum between an orange and Antino's. Help. This is dangerous. This is very dangerous.
This is very dangerous. Very dangerous.
This is dangerous. Nobody
be a
likes
lot
your
of-
peaches for any reasons.
There's gonna be a lot of toxic relationships coming out of this right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. No. Please do not date.
Do not
teenagers
listen to
who
that.
may or may not have not been, freed people. Don't do that.
We don't need that. We don't need that.
Adrian. Anyway, so back to temples. So this is where I have beef with people who call these things trinkets.
Yeah.
So the main beef may or may not be Homer's fault, but not really. So when Eumaeus is telling his story, I think it's him. He talks shit about the Phoenicians, as we do. And he says that the Phoenicians came in their black ships full of athurmata, and they stole people, right?
Okay.
Athurmata is the Greek word for trinkets, little toys.
Small things.
Some scholars have taken that as, oh, these are clearly, scarabs, amulets, and everything else.
Gotcha.
That's a bad read for me, because these things are found in temples. If something is good enough for a god, it's not a stupid trinket, unless we want to redefine what a trinket is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's very
Because
true.
these things,
Yeah.
right? I would not call them athurmata. If we had to be pedantic and use a Greek word, I would say agalmata, which are the things that you dedicate to the gods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Much
no,
better.
That's much better. Like
But
even
trinkets.
trinkets are so weird to me because it's something that I've just discovered about myself is that I have a lot of I don't frequently use the word trinkets. I use the word tchotchkes. I have so many like things that are just like all over and sitting around my house. But when I really look at all of these things, very many of these have sentimental value, or I could tell you exactly where I get them. And I've discovered that is not a normal thing for some people. My roommate.
No,
when
I remember where I have a frog collection. I remember where I got every single frog.
Yeah, and that's
So-
I when me and my roommate put together a large mural of like different pictures above our couch, I like every single one of those pieces were things that I like were very sentimental to me. And when we had our housewarming party, we invited our friends to guess which ones were mine and which ones were hers.
I love that.
It was great. It was just so impromptu, but we were like, it was about half and half. And truly, like, all of mine, like, one was an image of Italy that my friend had brought back from me when we were, like, literally when we were children, she had brought it back for me, and I had never hung it up before. She didn't even remember it. And I said, one of these you know because you gave it to me. And she goes, what? And, like, one is a picture of Budapest that I found at a thrift store, and, like, my grandparents were born in Budapest, so I was like, yeah. But, like, I realized many of the things that she got, she just got aesthetically, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, how does that work? And I'm like, no, everything that I have is very, like, I am a sentimental hoarder, as I say. Because I don't hoard trash, I don't hoard newspapers or boxes, I hoard things that make me happy that are sentimental. So.
Exactly.
But yeah,
exactly.
so trinkets is hard to say. It's not.
It's a word that is an issue, right?
Yeah.
But if these things are dedicated in temples, and the things that are dedicated in temple are not trash, right? These are the good quality objects. So surely they have value. Now, the interesting thing about the dedications in Sicily is the gender division between the deities to which these things are dedicated.
Okay.
Now, big caveat here. It may be a glitch in the data because Sicily has a lot more temples dedicated to goddesses than gods.
Okay.
And a lot more of those temples have been excavated properly.
Okay.
So
okay.
this is, right? This is like tentative. But it seems that these were actually given more to goddesses than to gods, right?
Okay.
The two exceptions are the Temple of Mozia, which is a seafaring sanctuary. So actually it tracks. Because in a seafaring sanctuary, people would dedicate whatever.
Yeah.
And this is a sanctuary with like several deities. There's Baal, Dir, there's Astarte, there's, maybe someone else. So it's like a hodgepodge of genders. And Montepolizzo, because we don't know who the Montepolizzo deity was. We don't know the gender of this deity.
Got it.
We know that they liked antlers because the antler agenda lives, people from the Ludo History Discord server.
Okay.
Montepolito has hundreds, thousands of antlers dedicated to this deity. Not one name, not one representation, not one, notion of
Weird.
gender to be seen.
Okay.
Anywhere, right? What the fuck? Okay.
That's
so,
very strange.
Right? And there is one single scarab in Montepolito among material culture choices that show that these people at a certain point absolutely rejected Greek material culture and they actually went back to their ancestral roots in the shape of their temples. So instead of building rectilinear structures, they build round huts like their ancestors, because they are creating an ancestral identity as an act of resistance against Greek military expansion, military and cultural expansion, right? And this happens in other temples too. But they still have one fucking scarab. So many questions. But
so genuinely wild.
It's incredible. It's
so
it's
weird.
Great.
I love that.
The antlers were very dear to them.
Oh, boom! I need one of those sound effects, man. That is so interesting because there are, I don't know why, whenever you do one of these things where you're collecting data from Earth, there's always one weird outlier, and that's a weird outlier. That's a really weird one.
Yeah.
The antlers.
Yeah.
Could it be in like
The antlers are great.
I'm not as familiar with Greek mythology as I once was when I was a young child, but like I wonder if it's like some sort of god or goddess to nature. Like I don't know, do Greeks have any genderless gods or goddesses that are like just an entity? I mean, I don't think the Egyptians have
Not
one really.
really.
Yeah.
Not really, but this is not a Greek temple. This is an Elymian sanctuary. This is an indigenous sanctuary. So
Oh, okay. So yeah.
We
so
don't-
yeah. Okay.
So we don't know, but surely a deity of the hunt. Because, these deer were also like sacrificed and eaten in there.
Yeah. Got it.
And red deer was common in Sicily. It's a thing that indigenous communities seem to have liked a lot. We actually have some vases in which there are human figures wearing antlers on their heads, and they seem to be dancing together or in a procession. So it's possible that the antlers were actually worn for rituals, but we don't know, right? It's possible. But there is this one goddamn scarab in there. The others are like mostly Greek deities, right? Like it's generally a Greek thing. Now, this doesn't mean that the people who dedicated these things were Greeks, because these sanctuaries are open to everyone, right? But, it seems to be that Greek temples were particularly receptive to this kind of stuff. And there is also no special relationship between particular deities and particular types of objects. So everyone can get everything, right? There's no thing. Some deities are not entirely certain, so this is educated guesses on their gender, but we will see. But it is interesting. It's a very interesting thing. So I'm reading the question of friend at arms. It is mostly red deer antlers. I don't know if most of them were like, well, the problem with it is that sometimes we cannot tell if they had been, if they shed them or if they just chopped the animal, because if you lose the parts that is attached, you don't know. But it's mostly red deer antlers. They don't bring anything in with a rack, also because Sicily doesn't really have anything else with a rack, right? There are rams, there are ram horns, maybe bulls. But in the indigenous sanctuaries especially, it's mostly the antlers. Of the local red deer. It also makes sense because these sanctuaries are on top of hills and mountains surrounded by the woods, right? So it's like the local deer population would be plentiful around.
Very interesting. God.
It's interesting and it is messy. I forgot to slide 11, so then we move to tombs, right? We move to the underworld now.
Yeah, we love tombs.
This is number of tombs and objects follow the same pattern, and of course the increasing variety of types used in burials from the 6th century BC onwards shows us also that more people were using these objects at all class, like at all wealth levels, right? If we look at the age, and this is very tentative, mostly adults. The people who are using these things are mostly adults, less, children. The problem is that children's bones dissolve a lot easier than, so sometimes you have babies buried with their parents or one of their parents, and then you don't find the baby because it just melts down. And the soil in Sicily is usually very wet, very acidic, so bones are always in terrible state, which is why it's also very difficult to talk about gender with these things, right? In tombs, in theory, some objects seems to have been specific for women, and some seems to have been specific for children.
Okay.
So, for instance, there are these hedgehog-shaped vessels, the Egyptian ones, right? They're mostly in tombs of children, or women buried with very small babies. I do wonder if something about the hedgehog being a symbol of rebirth had passed through. I do wonder.
Yeah, that's
because
that seems
right.
Very, I know. So one of the things I did research on recently is that the god Bess is caught on with by a lot of other communities, and I'm just blanking on what other communities, but I could have sworn it was the Phoenicians and Cyprus, I think, as well. And Bess is a household god, and that's one of his main things is children and women and childbirth and stuff. So I would say if that one can get passed along, why not that? I feel like
why not these
certain things. I mean, I hate to say it, it is not. I would have probably, just looking at the very basis of this, I would have automatically assumed a lot of these things are going to be associated with women and children, because when you just look in general, I hate to say it, the men got nothing. You very rarely find stuff that are the little tiny things. You don't really find them with men, and I don't know why, but it's just...
Let's talk about things then. Let's talk about the gender. Okay,
yes.
So it's very difficult to get gender from these tombs. Bunch of bones have not been, also sex, gender, but from the burial assemblage, generally there can be some indications of gender. So in Phoenician cities, men wear these scarabs in a very particular way. They wear them on their chest on big ass rings that I don't know if they were hanged from their neck or if they were sewn through a clothes. They're big and heavy. In Greek cities, people who wear them on rings or on bracelets, because we actually have some annotations from the very first excavations of where these things were found on the bodies. Usually have them either around their neck, on the fingers, or on the wrist.
Got it.
If it's around the neck, it's usually, but not always, a woman or a child. Which also brings us to the point of popular religion. Why would you give these things to your children and women? For protection,
always.
Right?
It's always for protection.
It's always protection,
it's
right?
Always.
It's if you need to protect the most vulnerable parts of the population, it's the women and children, right? So you give them that. So I was at a conference, and big name professor asked me, "Oh, but how do we know that these things actually had any amuletic value for these people?" And I was like, I don't know, if you wear something around your neck, it's very intimate.
Yeah.
I may be reading too much into this, but it is, right?
No,
I
absolutely.
have an Egyptian amulet around my neck, right? I have the Eye of Ra here. I wouldn't wear something that I don't care about around my neck, right? That I wouldn't bury, my wife, my child with something I don't care about around their neck.
It's absolutely, for my senior thesis, I did a project where I didn't really like how most scholars talk about, and even not even scholars, just like in normal like college, when they talk about Aten and they talk about in Amarna, I really always hated how they always said Aten was the only god. Like it always had that connotation that if you worshipped any other god, you would be punished. Even though there's not as much, like, there's nothing really to back that up. And so I did research to see if I could, like, to see if there were others. And so I literally did something very similar to what you did, is I found all of the different amulets and tiny pieces of things that had other gods, which were mainly Bes, Taweret, and Hathor. Which I'm like, hey,
hey, guess which one?
Guess which ones it's gonna be. It's always gonna be those. Yeah, and I also mapped where they were found, and like, yeah, many of them are gonna be in like the different neighborhoods and stuff. There were a few in the palace, which made me laugh.
I mean, right?
Yeah, and then my weird outlier, which reminds me of you and the little baby, is
my weird outlier.
There's a place called the Maru Aten, which is this random temple in the really south of Amarna. It was excavated and then it was plowed over, so we can't excavate it again. And apparently, in some just little passing notebook, underneath a staircase, there was a woman and a child buried, and they had a little I think it was a little stela of some sort that had the image of like Taweret or something on it. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, what? I need more information. And nothing. I could find nothing. But I'm like,
so many questions about people buried under a
staircase.
The fuck?
Yeah, no, of course, just in passing. So let me... Yeah. But this is it. It's
let me tell you about another sad story, because it has to go with Taweret, because you mentioned her. So one other extremely sad tomb, like, let me tell you, when I was studying the tombs of the children, I cried real tears.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, a lot of them. Because they're just so small. One of them was a Phoenician baby from Palermo. Parents wealthy enough to afford the tomb. The two things that were found in the tomb were a little broken pot with some red ochre on it, and one single tiny amulet of Taweret. And I was like, I was tearing up. Like,
so
I get emotional talking about that one, because it's like, you can only afford like a couple of things that you want to give to your child that you are sending to his or her tomb. And the thing that you think about is, of course it has to be an amulet of a goddess that protects the babies.
Absolutely.
It's just,
but it's so odd how like they're like, my big argument of this whole thing, it's just like, one of the things that I had actually learned it in a totally different context. I took a African diaspora class, and my professor told us about, essentially, it was called like, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was something called like hidden rebellion. And so it was people who were enslaved people in certain communities who weren't able to do like the big rebellion and try to overtake their enslavers and stuff. They would do little things where they would not clean a certain portion, and they would just do little things to kind of spark their rebellion and to make them feel like more alive. And so my whole thing was like, is that what these people in Amarna are doing? Are they just like, we're pissed that we essentially had to move to this whole random place in Egypt
in the middle of fucking nowhere.
In the middle of fucking nowhere, in a place that's literally at this point crumbling apart because everything was just made so haphazardly. And is this their tiny version of saying like, I'm gonna still worship the god? Or was it just like, there's also a very sketchy but kind of belief that maybe the Egyptians were not as religious as we think they are, and stuff, that like the lay people, one of the person who coined this article, which I'm still reading, it's a very in-depth article, is Barry Kemp, who works at Amarna. And so it kind of comes, I think, from his research there, saying that it's like, worshipping the gods is not really the same thing. It's almost like having those little amulets of protection are just like common sense, almost like.
Right. And so it's like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Go out without an amulet?
No, like it's like literally it's like taking pepper spray or something somewhere. Like it's
right.
And so it's something that's always been very interesting to me, because it's like those objects they are always found. Like, they are found literally everywhere. So is it gone beyond a religious concept, or is it just a, hey, don't forget your keys. You need your keys, like, to survive in this life. Like, I don't know. It's interesting to pull the religion out of it, but there can be rituals that have nothing to do with religion.
Exactly. It could just be magic, right?
Yeah.
Magic. You know, apotropaic magic to just protect. It doesn't need to be religious, but it's like, maybe it's something real. Which brings me to actually the interpretation thing. So the next slide, the one with the thing, the interpreting the data. So this is like the big, because the big questions are more social than archaeological, right? So how are we fitting these objects into what is happening in Sicily? Because they don't exist in a vacuum. So what is happening in Sicily at the time where these objects start being imported? What happens when there is the first peak, and what happens when there is a second peak, right? And that's very interesting, because in the 8th century BC, we are at the very first stages of urbanization, and the hierarchies, the social hierarchies, seem to have still been pretty fluid, right? There's no, frozen hierarchic order, of people. And these jewels, they are very expensive. These are really good Hyksos period scarabs in the 8th century BC. These are like the good shit, okay?
Nice ones. Okay.
They are acquired together with Greek vessels by these, I call them proto-elites, because they are not elites in the sense that they're not frozen, yet. Probably to show off their wealth and connections. Of course, the other things that they have in their tombs are the local signs of wealth and connection. The weapons, the big vases, the food offerings. They have tombs, which is already something. So these are like, part of this whole, we need to show off, right? In the 7th century BC, the social hierarchies are still kind of fluid, but with a buy-in price, right?
Got it.
And the buy-in price is not money, but it's prestige, right? Prestige is the currency of the 7th century BC around the Mediterranean, because there is a network of international elite groups based on gift exchange and prestige. Prestige means that you need to show the right objects in the right occasions to the right people, because you need to be recognized both by the people at home and by the people abroad as part of the upper echelons of society. So you need to play both sides. This means that certain symbols are recognized by everyone as symbols of elite, right? Yeah. This also means that these symbols can be acquired. Otherwise, society would be closed, right? There would be no vertical mobility, vertical social mobility. So the Aegyptica, in this sense, are used by the elites to acquire social prestige and negotiate social rank locally and internationally. Locally also means at a regional level, because at this point, we see these very fancy objects being donated in sanctuaries. And these people are clearly donating fancy objects to show off, right? It's the performativity of it.
Absolutely.
And they're being buried with them, also performative as fuck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is what happens. And then the 6th century is when the big changes happen, because the 6th century BC is a time of political centralization and war. Vertical social mobility is lessened because it's a time of tyrants in Sicily. Yeah. But interestingly, this is when non-elite people become able to afford this stuff, because mass production opens. So we have something. During my dissertation, I made the example of French bulldogs, mostly because one of the committee members has a French bulldog, and I wanted to,
Absolutely.
Pinch him a little. I love the girl. Her name is Lola. Yeah, no,
Lola.
Lulu, she's great. And I was like, okay, listen. So at the very beginning, when French bulldogs were first imported, they looked great. They had a snout, and only very wealthy people could afford them, right? So they become a status symbol. When the market understands that there is a demand for these things, they need to up the offer for them, but the quality goes down. So the people who are less wealthy are going to be able to afford the cheaper copies of this stuff, whereas the wealthy people are still getting the higher tier stuff, right? We have some excellent scarabs in Palermo at this point, but, you know, they have become effectively a symbol of something, right? Maybe it's because these people were trying to emulate what had been an elite status symbol, and probably at the same time, these objects had entered popular religion as amulets.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And the thing about the where they come from and the wish.com, which is
Wish.com, man.
Nocratis.egi, right? Exactly,
Yes.
Timu, but it's Nocratis.
Yes.
The big question that people ask is like, but did they know what they were buying and did they care where they come from, right? Now, I don't know, okay? My educated guess as a scholar is maybe and no. Maybe in the sense that perhaps they had some idea that some objects were used for protection, for instance, the scarabs.
Yeah.
And that some objects were only funerary, like the Ushabtis, but they don't know how to use the Ushabtis because the Ushabtis that we find in Sicily are either without the names, without the magic formula, or they have been stolen from 19th century Theban tombs and they still have the name of the original owner. Girl, that Ushabti is not going to work for you.
No,
It's not going to work for you
Not gonna
because
work.
it doesn't have your name. So they don't know what they're reading, right? And even the scarabs have pseudo hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
But is it the fact that
Oh,
it's an
okay.
object that looks Egyptian, or do you care that it was produced maybe in Egypt by people who could not read them, right?
Yeah.
Did they care? I don't think they did. I think that the vibe was that, and maybe the fact that these objects had entered popular religion, right?
Yeah.
So, or, you know, and I also like to imagine that there were traders who were selling the actual stuff, like these
This is the
guaranteed
real-
from Egypt. Exactly, you know, look at it, look
Yeah.
at the shine, probably. I mean, where's those
I mean, there's of
swindlers.
course always going to be hustlers, man. Absolutely.
Always.
No matter what
And
it is.
also, like, a big assumption is that these things came to Sicily somehow, but I bet that the moment the people in Sicily understood that it was a market for this shit, they went to get them. Maybe not all the way to Egypt, maybe they stopped in Greece, maybe they went to Rhodes, because we cannot assume that it was just east to west.
East to west.
Right?
Yeah.
That would be a little reductive. Like, they're just waiting for these things to arrive, like waiting and be like, it should be done. No. There's going to be made. We're going. Like, I bet you there were entrepreneurs from, I don't know, from Syracuse who went and got the things and brought them back and made money. Because it makes sense, right? Especially in the 6th century BC. 7th century BC, I don't think so, because these things are still elite
A leader.
status stuff. But 6th century BC, oh my god, yes. Like, I bet you there were like...
There's a guy who
Going
wants to
everywhere.
go and try to get it. Did you notice at all if a change in materials? Because I know scarabs are sometimes made out of faience. They don't always have to be made out of it. But I don't know what the range of faience, if faience was able to be made outside of Egypt at the time.
That's a really good question. There is a lot of faience. There's a lot of like Egyptian blue.
Okay.
Glass paste, bone,
Okay.
steatite.
Got it.
We don't have factories that we have certainly identified
Yeah.
in the Western Mediterranean apart from Carthage.
Okay. Okay.
But surely there must have been more.
Yeah.
Surely there must have been more, right? Now, typologically speaking, most of the scarabs found in Sicily fall into Eastern Mediterranean types, apart from the ones who are Phoenician,
Got it.
right? But we don't know if that means that they were made in the Eastern Mediterranean or if the molds were traveling, right?
Yeah. I was gonna say, did you find any
So-
molds? No
No.
molds. Yeah.
No.
That
None
was
of
my
them.
favorite
We
thing.
have them in Nocratis.
with the Amarna stuff. I found shit tons of molds. So I was like,
Yeah,
that means
Nocratis has them.
that means that they are making these Taweret and best things. They are making them right here, man. They're not. These are not things that they brought from home. They're continuing to make them and stuff. So that was my big. I was like, oh, like if you found any molds, like that would be. But again, like molds are not going to be found in a tomb, and they're not going to be found in a temple. They'd be found in a town. Which, if you also didn't have very many towns,
good luck. Yeah, exactly. And
pause for a second.
No, we didn't.
There's an ad. There's an ad. Water break.
No problem.
I usually try to chug.
Is cracking me up.
I know, they're so good. I usually try to chug my water as fast as possible for the whole 30 seconds so I can actually get hydrated. Okay. It should be over. Okay.
The hustle is real. So
real.
Yeah, we have fun. But I'm like some of you shopties are made of terracotta. Like I bet they were made locally.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I'm telling you.
Yeah, no.
Like 100%. Like, but why though? Like, are there like Egyptians living in Lipari? Like in Lipari, and they're like, hey, can you make this? Or like, are they just, you know,
it's so
this is a trendy thing. We can.
It reminds me of the canopic jars that are made in the late period that don't have holes in them. Where it's like those people, which like is very hard for you mentally to work your way around, which I know it is hard for people to mentally work their way around it, that those people in the late period have forgotten what these pieces were, but know that they are important enough that they have to be put in the tomb. And some people are like, what do you mean? Like, obviously they know. And I'm like, nobody writes this stuff down.
No, they don't.
Like,
you know,
so
like these.
I feel like that's what this has to be.
Yeah. No, these people in Sicily know enough about the Ushabtis that they put them in tombs. We only find Ushabtis in tombs.
So funny.
But they don't know how they work because the names on them are the names of the Egyptians from whose tombs this shit has been stolen.
I love that. I love that too. That's really funny, and I would love if you have examples of some of those names, because I would love to search other museums to see if they have shopties with those names on it, because that would be very interesting. I would love to connect the dots for things that are being stolen.
There is one Teddy, because there's always one
there's always a Teddy.
It's always a Teddy. It's like you know, Giuseppe or Giovanni in Italian families. There's always
easiest
one.
name. Teddy. Always. But that would be very funny to look at and see.
I see a question in the chat. Good question in the chat.
Absolutely.
Are there objects found in Savage that were sold that were very difficult to transport? Are the means of transport and lifetime of job considering these studies? So to answer the first question, there is a very heavy statue, granite statue of a scribe, of an Egyptian scribe in Sicily, and it was found in the Temple of Apollo in Syracuse.
Wow.
And yeah, cool. He's big. Like life size.
Okay.
So it is, but it is the only one that I can think of in Sicily, at least.
Yeah.
Everything else is small. Means of transport, I mean, surely by ship, right? If that is what you mean. I don't know how they were stocked. Some people have suggested they were just literally chucked into vases, and then you would sell the vase with all the content. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about that, but also that person was kind of a dick, so, you know, don't take his word for it. He's Italian. We're not gonna name any names, but, you know, god damn it.
Yes.
And lifetime of an object is a very interesting thing, because some of these scarabs are old. They are older, like a generation older than the tombs in which they are found, so they actually may be family heirlooms.
What?
So grandma's scarab, right?
Scarab.
You know, grandma's amulet. It could be, right?
I mean,
or they were imported later.
Yeah.
Because we don't know.
It's so interesting to think, because like, whenever obviously, like, yes, probably the direction that they are coming from is from Egypt to whatever. But if these guys are elites, like, wouldn't it be absolutely crazy if these were people who visited Egypt themselves and brought them home as souvenirs? Which, like, we're never gonna be able to prove that. But
never gonna be able to prove it. We would never know. But
we would never know. But wouldn't,
right?
like I need to say it, a sea captain a sea captain who's already trading, like that's something. I mean, I hate to say it, that's every piece of Egyptomania that is coming from Egypt in like the early 1800s is. I've studied mummies that have come to America. All of them were purchased by sea captains who were literally in the area and wanted to do, like, the mummy that I studied is Captain Larkin Turner's mummy, and Mr. Larkin Turner bought this mummy in Trieste, which is my other favorite thing. Trieste was an enormous importer of mummies where they would go straight from Egypt to Trieste, and that would be the main hub, because Trieste was, before it was part of Italy, it was the only seaport of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire.
Yes,
and
indeed. Yeah,
so,
they fought hard.
Yeah, and so Trieste actually has a archaeology museum where there is a large collection of Egyptian things that are pretty much just left there because it seems like people have, instead of like going to Egypt and purchasing it, Egypt would just sell things to Trieste, to like an importer there, and that's where Europeans and Americans would pick things up. They wouldn't go to Egypt themselves in some cases. They would just go to Trieste and say, oh, hey, I'm going to take that and that and that. And then there's, I think, things that no one ever bought. And I think they're all in a museum now.
The leftovers.
The leftovers. But literally, like, sea captains are obviously going to be somebody that a trader, like, hate to say it, you go pick up a souvenir and then you go pass it down to your grandkids. Like, I mean, we'd love.
That's why I'm so pissed that we don't have the context for the objects in Erice. Like, I bet you at least one or two of them that was a seafaring sanctuary, right? The one in Mozia, also a seafaring sanctuary. Are you gonna tell me that none of those were? Yeah.
No,
even if it's not a seafaring sanctuary, like even like most of the cities are on the coast.
Yeah, I know.
Cities are on the coast. Like,
and
it could be.
It's also a good protection. These are like one of the other things. The sea, very dangerous. Like it makes sense. Like, even if you don't associate it with what it was in Egypt, it very well could have just been, all that got passed down was that it was for protection, no matter who it was.
Yes.
Like, maybe that at least got passed down.
Exactly. It's protection. Like, and of course, we don't know in which context the one heart scarab that we have from Sicily.
The heart scarab is very interesting. Yeah.
One heart scarab, also stolen.
I feel like it has to have they just thought it was a big scarab, because I feel like like heart scarabs look just like big scarabs for the most part, unless they have like
this one, he's a chunker. He's
wow.
He's a big boy. I was told that there's another one.
Ooh.
But then the scholar who told me that absolutely ghosted me. Like,
fuck
I was like, ma'am, like, I didn't ask you.
That's the worst. That's the worst.
Oh, so, question. So there must have been trade of objects that are less durable. Oh, yes. Food
absolutely.
and such. Yes. Fabric, wood. Perfume, oil, wine, ointment, grain, especially from Sicily.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have it's very difficult to find evidence of that for the Archaic period. Very, very difficult. But the evidence that exists for trade is mostly tracing where objects pop up. You can literally trace the networks. Like, you can trace like the routes where objects pop up. So for instance, you can trace where the Euboeans were going because their fucking vases are everywhere. So you can follow. And it's always better to do it with different classes of materials. So not just like one type of pots, but like several. If I were to expand this project, I would probably trace the diffusion of these objects in Sicily against the diffusion of other types of material culture to see if maybe they were traveling on the same route. I bet they were.
Probably.
But yeah, it is very interesting. The study of ancient trade routes is very interesting, and of course you get the shipwrecks. So
and shipwrecks.
Worst case scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's lots of evidence of Greek pottery is found all over Egypt throughout a lot of different time periods. Not really, hate to say it, not really the nice stuff, but the mostly okay stuff. I mean, in comparison to Egyptian pottery, which I hate, is so boring. In comparison, some of the Greek pottery. what happened with the like? That's just my favorite part about the Egyptians is like
Okay,
they
let's talk
obviously
about it.
were
What
like
happened there?
they literally. It is just so obvious that they knew that they did not have to put their energy into this, and that there was nothing
Yeah.
ritualized about it. There was nothing religious. There was literally nothing. It is just pottery, and it cracks me up.
They really could not give two
They could not
fucks.
they-
But
no, they're
then
like-
but then you get the alabaster shit and the metal stuff and everything else. But ceramics, no, we don't.
Except
fuck
for
with
that
terracotta.
one little time period, with Amenhotep
well, they were
III and the
weird.
Amarna, and they get the blue, the beautiful blueware pottery.
Yes,
You
the-
get those Tutankhamun
exactly.
vases that are at the Met, and you're like, oh, so beautiful.
Too much effort.
Too much effort. But in another
Absolutely
way,
too much effort.
there is a really great example of trade with Egypt in other places of the Mediterranean is an area in Tel El Daba, otherwise known as Avaris. There is a large what was discovered archaeologically, which unfortunately is not as well preserved because the delta is a very wet environment in comparison to like the rest of Egypt, is there's a really cool fresco relief that is found within the city, and it is like it's very there's little things that are preserved, but from what it is preserved, it is almost identical to the bull leaping fresco that is found in the
Yes.
Palace of
Yes.
Knossos in Crete. And so there are a lot of theories about this, but this was the city of the Hyksos people before it
It's
was
Avaris,
a
it's
capital.
Tel El Daba.
Yeah, Tel Daba, and there's I think the very common theory I think that most people has kind of accepted is that it appears that the Hyksos had a good enough relationship with the Minoans in Crete that I like the ambassadorship that essentially the Minoans potentially
Yes.
built their own
Yes.
structure as like a trade source, and this is very inland.
Yeah.
Avaris is very inland in the delta, and it appears that the Minoans may have had like maybe not a whole settlement, but at least a couple people staying there, and that the trade was pretty good. And there are just tons of some Egyptian stuff can be found elsewhere. I find most of the time it seems Egypt is exporting, I think, perishable goods like grains and things. And you see Senate boards, the Egyptian board game, which we talked
Yes.
about on my lecture in the beginning of the month. That's a highlight on my Twitch if you guys want to see it. The Senate boards are found. There are more Senate boards found on the island of Cyprus than all in Egypt.
Oh my god, they really like
There
really
are
like the
over
Senate
500 Senate boards in there, but they are slightly different types. But it's showing like the distribution of this just board game, this very casual board game. In Egypt became more religious and stuff, but there are little things that get diffused in this early time period, because we are still talking. This is 8th century BC, which means it's well, actually no, we're at the kind of end-ish of Egyptian history in general.
mean,
so it's
Endish.
end-ish.
No, I will not stand for 26 Dynasty slander because they are my babies and I love them.
I know
Because
nothing
they are the
about
ones
the
who open
26
the
dynasty.
factories. No,
Yeah.
but that's the cool thing about the 26 Dynasty. They're probably the ones who see the PR value in this
Mm-hmm.
stuff and they start producing it and sending it around. Because whose cartouches do they put on those scarabs? Menkeperra,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
No one else. No one else.
else,
Tutmos
yeah.
is the third. Like, oh yeah, look, we are just as good. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe his cartouche had become like how do you say it, a household staple? Right?
Oh yeah,
you know,
household
pop
staple. Yeah,
culture?
absolutely. Yeah.
Like everyone knew that cartouche, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's it's that dude. This is like from Egypt. Maybe
Yeah.
it's possible, right?
No,
we don't
for
know.
sure. I
but
mean, we
what-
know that
I mean,
the 26th dynasty did that with Imhotep. So yeah.
yeah. No,
they're
they
like,
did
I'm
that.
gonna
Well, they had
deify
to,
this
right?
guy as a god because he built the first pyramid, and it's just like,
Exactly.
okay, like
Listen,
we've never.
26 Dynasty. PR geniuses, like who
They-
the fuck
they
is
are.
Imhotep? We don't care. We
Yeah.
don't care.
I do
He's
love
a
that.
god now.
That is very.
I love that.
It's just hysterical. It's like we have no images of what Imhotep looked like from when he actually lived,
Absolutely.
but just so many thousands of years after he lived.
Yeah. Sure,
Totally
we asked the ancestors and they told us that he looked exactly like this. And you're like, what the fuck? You know what?
Oh god, don't even get me
my
started, Ludo, about the mummy, because it annoys me to heck. Which it's not a blame on the 1999 mummy, it's a blame on the 1932 mummy, which I do prefer because it is funny and it's old and funny. But I always get so annoyed that it's Imhotep and Ankhsenamun. That is like Gretchen and
like,
Brad
no.
getting together. Those are two names
Exactly,
from
no,
thousands of
that's-
years ago getting together.
Exactly.
So, not my favorite.
Doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Oh my god.
Alrighty.
I could have chosen any name for her,
Any
but
name.
you know.
Oh my god!
Oh. Any fucking name.
I honestly, I would have been happier with a made-up Egyptian name, which I usually am not.
Yeah.
But I would have been happier with two made-up Egyptian names than two. Which like even 1932, like it's so funny because they literally just picked like Ankhsenamun, like Tutankhamun's wife, like only 10 years after they discover him. I don't know.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
I have like okay, let's get crackpot theory question. Okay.
Crackpot,
So
yeah.
do you think that the Egyptian queen who asked for a Hittite prince
Oh,
was Ankhsenamun?
it has to be. I want it to be
Right?
so
Right.
bad.
It has to be her. It has to be her.
I want it to
For
be
the
her
drama.
for the drama.
Oh my
I want it to be her so bad. I really want it to be her so bad because it just it doesn't.
It fits.
It fits. It's on an Amarna letter, so it has to be from that time period. And I hate to say it, there's no one else that really like technically, I guess it could have been Nefertiti, but there were sons. There, like Tutankhamun was there, so like it wasn't that she was totally alone. But
Also, I mean, Cougar Nefertiti asking for a young Hittite prince? No.
Oh no, I hate to
no.
say it, Nefertiti
Oh, no.
would 100% do that. That is.
Yeah, no, she would.
I don't
she
know if
would,
you-
and we love that for her, but no.
We love that for her, but I hate. No, if you've ever, unfortunately, a lot of my opinions about Nefertiti has been very much influenced by a fiction book, which like probably it's called Nefertiti by Michelle Moran. It is my favorite book of all time.
Oh my god.
If no one's ever read it, you have to read it.
I read it.
It's my favorite part about this book is that it's called Nefertiti, but it is not in Nefertiti's perspective. It's in her younger sister, which I always
Yes.
Mutnojmet. And literally, it is Nefertiti is a mean girl, and I love that for her. Like there is no other way. There is no other
Oh
way
my
that
God.
I can see her in my
listen,
eyes, and it's so probably wrong.
If you want questionable but wildly entertaining books set in the Amarna period, you need to read the books of the series of Lord Merrin. Okay?
Of Lord Merrin?
These
I'm
is-
writing this down.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. So he.
'Cause I do
he
love the
is
Amarna
the head
period.
of spies. The head of spies of Tutankhamun.
Okay.
But he has been horribly scarred in mind and body by the Amarna period.
Whoa.
It's 5 books. It's murder mysteries, but like the last 2 are fucking bonkers.
Oh,
Lots of
I'm-
Nefertiti content.
reading that.
Oh my god, you love all of them.
I'm reading that.
The first 2 are like you can see that the author was like trying to get the hang of it, and then the last 3 are explosive.
I'm very excited.
Yeah, historic and questionable, but wildly entertaining. I love those books.
Marna Noir.
I love them.
Yeah,
Oh my god.
Yeah, can you type that out into the chat for everyone? Cause
Yes.
that's,
One
that sounds
second.
amazing. But yeah, I do recommend Michelle Moran's book. She has 3 Egypt-themed books. I have read Nefertiti, and I have also read Cleopatra's Daughters, which is a very interesting story. It's these are obviously very
Yes,
historically
yes.
and like
This one is as actual. Yeah.
yeah, but
I
but
put them in the chat. Like I put
Perfect.
the Goodreads.
oh Lord Marin, yeah.
Thing.
The other one is about Hatshepsut, which I have not read, but I do own it and I need to read it.
Have
But
you
she
read
writes
The Woman
she
Who
writes
Would Be King?
No.
No, that's Kara
No,
Cooney.
that's Kara
Ah.
Cooney. No, that one is called.
Uh-huh.
Wait, I literally have it on my shelf. That one's called.
We're comparing notes.
That
Oh
one's
my
called
god,
the,
there was another one. It was-
Heretic Queen. The Heretic Queen.
That's
by-
Nefertari. That's Nefertari.
Oh.
Nefertari.
Oh,
Oh,
that's, I
my
thought
god.
that was about
it is-
Hatshepsut. Oh, I'm wrong. I've been telling people the wrong thing
That
for years
one?
now.
That one has choices. That one has
All right, now I gotta read it.
choices.
Oh, Nefertari.
Yeah.
That's not who I expected it to be. She's not
Yeah,
that
it's-
heretic. Oh, okay.
It has takes
Okay.
It has takes. It has, no, I cannot tell you more than that because, no, you need to read it. You need to read it too.
That sounds amazing. Oh God, I need to start reading again.
No, oh my God, if you read the Lord Marin series, like, let me know.
That
Like,
seems
it's,
wild.
You know, the first two are Murder at the Feast of Rejoicing is a lot of fun, and it's clearly inspired by Agatha Christie's Death Comes at the End.
Okay, gotcha.
Setting. From there, like that one, Eater of Souls, Drinker of Blood, and Slayer of Gods, incredible.
Whoa.
Incredible.
Whoa.
Like,
This is great.
Fantastic.
I'm so excited. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we get back to
the protagonist? Sorry. I would say the protagonist. Oh my God, the thing that like haunts me to this day is the protagonist is like, oh man, I already have like one grandchild, you know, and I'm already old. I'm 34, and I'm like, fuck off.
Oh God. Oh, this you know what this reminds me of is that you also need to read this, which I've also told people that you need to read this. This is a book. I love this book so much. It is just pure comedy. This is a romance book called Unwrap My Heart.
Oh my God.
I've talked about this. I follow this guy on TikTok who is he's like a comedy writer and a comedian, and he essentially with his friends years ago, like I'm not even joking you, probably 10 plus years ago, they talked about, right after Twilight, they talked about how there were all of these romance books coming out about teenage girls falling in love with monsters, but there was never a mummy book, so they wrote one.
Oh my God. So there was a gap in the market, and
there was a gap in the market, and they took it, but then it never went off until he made a TikTok video talking about it, and then it like went crazy viral.
It exploded. I love it.
And
I love it.
It's probably one of the funniest books I've ever read in my life. And I mean, for their research, it's fairly accurate. If a mummy started walking on legs, like they talk about Egypt a lot in it, and it's pretty good. And it's probably
I gotta.
It's on Amazon. It's hysterically funny. As you can see on my tabs, because I was gonna make a video about it and then I never did because, but it is one of the funniest books I've ever read in my life because it is it's so stupid.
I'm reading the description.
Also, the quote on the back of this says, "The most realistic love story I've ever read," from Tutankhamun is who wrote it.
10 out of 10.
I have to read this because it's just so funny. Sophia is just a normal high school girl worried about getting her homework done and looking cool when he shows up, a devastatingly handsome new kid, mysteriously covered in decaying bandages and staring at her from empty holes where his eyes should be. She thinks he's just hipster, but there's more to this handsome stranger that meets the eye. Yes, he's a mummy. Well, we're not really making a secret about this. The twist is that he's a mummy. It's a book about a girl who falls in love with a mummy. We've read books, young adult books, about teenage girls unknowingly falling in love with vampires, werewolves, angels, demons, fairies, mermen, warlocks, dreamwalkers, and trolls. Seriously, there's one about trolls. It's time for mummies, damn it. It's time for mummies. That's what the back of this book says.
Oh yeah.
I'm
this
single.
Needs to become a series.
It does need to become a
love
series.
that.
It's genuinely
that.
one of the. There's also an archaeologist in it, and he is very funny. And there are the best part about the archaeologist is that he's like a kid like he was like he's like the kid who's gonna become an archaeologist. And when he volunteered on an excavation in like I think it's mostly like set in Southwest United States. He found a phallus stone, like a phallus ritual stone, and all of the the full-grown adult archaeologists thought it was so funny that all they do is send him like archaeological phalluses, and so when you go to his house, the entire front porch of his house is just covered in them, and they just casually work that into the conversation, and it's probably one of the funniest things I've ever read in my life because they just like so casually.
That is something that archaeologists do.
That is something
I cannot show you.
That's 100% what archaeologists would do.
Yeah. I have a photo of 2 amphora bases from my excavation that look respectively like a boob and a dick. I cannot show you because they're not published, but I have it on my phone and sometimes I send it to random people.
It's okay. When we were in Italy,
So, you know.
they told us about all the erodery we found, and I was like, erodery. It's probably one of the best words.
Oh no, these are actually like parts of a forest. It's just that they look like that.
Oh,
Like,
they
there's
look like
there's
them.
no way
No,
around.
you'll see it. Absolutely. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Pause over. Back to the
Okay,
very
so-
end of this
yeah.
lecture.
Serious, back to the thing. Well, we are at the conclusions, right? We are at the slide that says conclusions.
Perfect. Conclusions.
So look at us. So
Look at
and
us.
then we can talk about Lord Marin having 3 daughters. He's a single father to 3 daughters. Let me
Oh my god. Absolutely. We're talking about it.
but back to the thing. So the Aegyptica were used as amulets, symbols of wealth and connections, and grave goods. So, you know, get you an amulet that can do all of them. The use increased with time and spread both geographically and among people of different social status. So it's, you know, it's expanding, it's expanding. The data coming from funerary context suggests, suggests,
Yeah, always.
that it was slightly more common for women and children to own and wear the Aegyptica, right? So this is where I give back agency to the people, because the people chose to find a place for these objects in the ever-changing political, social, and cultural landscapes, you know, of Sicily. They were not forced to wear them. There was a demand for these things.
Yeah.
And the demand grew, and you know, they became more widespread as the island became increasingly entangled in Mediterranean networks, right? Trade, elite, everything else. So the significance of the Aegyptica was not based on them as or as markers of social, cultural, or political change, but on how they fit into what was already happening in Sicily. So they find a place for these things into their local agendas, because they are now in a global war. That's the glocalization part of it. So in the next slide, there's actually like, that's my dissertation in like 2 sentences.
Got it.
Like, it's the easiest. So like, these were multifunctional tools that, when used in conjunction with other local and imported objects, helped their owners to fulfill various personal agendas, from social ascent to protection from evil.
Yeah.
And that is it, right? That's as quickly as I could with
No,
all
that's
the
great.
answering that we did. But
amazing.
yeah, that is
Absolutely
that's
amazing.
the dissertation.
You do have a future inquiry tab. Do you want to go into detail on that one?
I mean, that is TBD.
Got it.
The main plan for now is to try to get to turn the dissertation into a monograph and get that published. So it's out.
Yeah.
It's out there. If I decide to stay in academia, if
Big if.
right?
Absolutely.
Big if, right? Thank you. I would probably expand, staying in the same time period and the same area. So still Sicily, still archaic, but as one of the people at my defense said, cutting the cake in a different way. So I would like to see how the diffusion of these objects can be traced on the diffusion map or other objects. I'm especially interested in seeing how you shop this work around the Mediterranean too.
Yeah.
Because that's something that has not been done. But I would like to keep working in Sicily. I'm actually keep working in Sicily. I'm actually going to Sicily in like a month and like a few days to dig for the whole summer. So so who knows? Maybe we'll find more, because between the moment I started writing the dissertation and the moment I finished it, we found more in our temple where we did.
I was gonna say I found at least, I think I found it almost 20 more dogs since finishing mine. Granted, there was a small
I was lucky
section.
enough.
There was a small list. There was a small list of ones that I had found when I was still writing it, but I had already finished writing most of it. So I was like, I literally have a tiny notebook, and in the very back it just said, "We don't talk about this, but this is where all of these pieces are," and all the citations.
No. I was lucky because the coolest piece came out while I was digging. I was writing.
That's really goddamn cool.
It's the most phenomenal falcon. It came out in my trench. I found it. It's so cool. It's so cool. It's an Egyptian blue. It's so cool. Like, the model for the falcon must have been metal, because the details are incredible. Our zooarchaeologist looked at it and was like, "Oh, this person knew what a falcon looks like, because look at the plumes, look at the different feathers." Fantastic, with the little hole on the head.
So good.
And the little loop at the back.
Yeah.
To be suspended.
Very
So
cool.
it's a really cool falcon. It's like
I was gonna say,
this
yeah.
small, very shiny. Very shiny. Yeah, it's this
I
small,
love
but
that.
it's like the best falcon found in Sicily. There are others that look more like chickens than falcon. No shade, but
Yeah.
they look more like chicken.
Yeah.
This
No,
one
they do.
is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
The Sicilian falcon is the next story.
The Sicilian falcon, exactly.
I will briefly answer Westerly's Witch and what Lena said, which was a question about this book, which I also haven't read because this is a book called Mummy, and it was written by a woman named Jane Loudon in 1821, and it's is supposedly one of the first books to ever like talk about a risen mummy coming to life, but it's from like 1821, so like prior to most major excavations in Egypt. So it's a very it also predicts like computers and the internet. There's it's a very interesting sci-fi portion to it. So this is the book that I still haven't read because I also bought it and tried to read it, and I was like, oh, it's written in 1821, so it's got some language that I cannot read.
Have you been reading Jasmine Day's work on mummies?
No. Jasmine Day?
She is the woman. Yeah, Dr. Jasmine Day. She
sounds
came
familiar.
to one of my talks on mummies in video games, so she's going to review my chapter on mummies in video games.
Woo! Very cool.
That I'm writing. Yeah. Yeah, no, she's the coolest. If you want to know like about mummies and like in pop culture and everything else, you need to read her stuff. She's incredible.
Okay.
She's fantastic.
I
I'm gonna
absolutely
write her name in the chat.
Yes, please. Because I've written a lot.
incredible.
I've read a lot about like I did research on a mummy. This is like the weird connection between my current job and my hobby and my career and stuff. When I was an intern at my current job, which is an archaeology museum, they asked me to do research on a mummy that had been displayed in a tavern in 1832 in my city. And I was like, what? Like, I was an Egyptology student who was doing an educational internship at a archaeology museum that focuses on 19th century America. And I'm like, what? How did this land in my lap? Like, this was the perfect project for me.
Who thought this was?
Yeah. And so I did more research. There's a really good book called Mummies in 19th Century America by S.J. Wolfe. It's a very good book. She also has a website called, it's very hard to find, unfortunately. It's not a very well done website. But it's a website that tracks every single Egyptian mummy that went around and was displayed in America in like the 18th and 19th century. Very cool.
I love that.
I wonder, here, let's switch over to this and stop sharing. There we go. I can pull it up. I think it's called the like Mummypedia. S.J. Wolfe. No. Mummy. She works for that's what it is. Where is it? It's called Emina, Egyptian Mummies in 19th Century America. It's a there it is. Woo, copy.
Ooh.
And paste that. It's a searchable database and such where you can look for mummies and stuff that were transported to Europe or from Europe to America and stuff. But I did all that research on that, and so I know about mummies in that context, and then I know obviously from Egyptology, but not as in other ways. But yeah, so that was the book that I was talking about. It's a very early version of like sort of sci-fi. It's very, because it's kind of around it's kind of like Frankenstein in certain ways. Very much kind of inspired by that. But she published it anonymously, which was really cool. Oh yeah, so 1818 is Frankenstein. So this is very much inspired by Frankenstein, but with an Egyptian twist. And it's Cheops.
And then
it's Cheops. Khufu
Conan
is the mummy.
Doyle stole the shit for
Fucking
love
Conan
number
Doyle.
249. That asshole.
Fucking Conan. He's like a dick.
I know, man. Yeah,
cracks
I
me up,
dislike
man.
him. I dislike him.
When I did research on mummies' curses for a lecture, and he just keeps coming up, and I'm like, why? He should not be in this conversation, but he is.
Alas.
Yes,
Alas.
alas.
There was a question in the chat. Are there any local people who inherited objects over generation, or is all evidence from excavations? If you mean the Aegyptica, I mean, yes, because a bunch of these ended up in museums and they were donated by private people. So, surely. The other thing that happened was in the 1700s, 1600s even, there was a lot of interest in these objects in Sicily because there was a persistent myth that Sicily had actually been an Egyptian colony. So when these things were found, they were taken as proof, right? Pots equals people.
Whoa.
In this case, scarabs equals people.
Huh.
That the things, were signifiers of
Wild.
of Egyptians living there. Like Sicily had been ruled by Osiris at a certain point. Incredible stuff. But yeah, plenty of stuff ended up in like private. Also, like if you dig anywhere in Italy, you are going to find antiquities.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right.
you are.
I have family in
Yes, thank you
Sicily
for
that
the
has
arms.
Greek vases because they
Yeah.
they dug in their backyard. Oh, there
Yeah.
was another
Yeah.
question.
So Baha asked, were the Isis cults a thing in this period and place?
Oh
you get an answer,
yeah.
Baha?
I did answer in the
Oh, you
chat.
did. Oh, okay, you did. Yeah.
Okay. Not that we know of. Not that we would ever be able to prove it, unless we found like a temple with inscriptions to mention Isis. Now, is it possible that like people traveling around the sea, once again, the sea captains and everything else, put together like several deities? Yes. It is also possible, to be fair, like for some of these early temples, that what later became the Greek gods, at a certain like these early were not congealed into
Yeah.
a single deity with a name, right? So, for instance, the temple where we work in Selinunte, it's a temple of a goddess for sure. We have her image. We know what she looks like. We don't have her name. She has no name. Well, because we never found inscriptions.
So
But like
annoying.
the
So annoying.
earliest sacrifices are like antlers again, a giant bull, a ram, other stuff. And it's like, but there's also loom weights and there's weapons. It's like, is it possible that like at the beginning they just called this one something along the lines of the lady, and then later on it became a sort of Demetriac cult? But in very early stages, we think that the Greek gods were like born, made and boxed and all of that. That's not how religion works, right? So probably not. And even like the unnamed, ungendered deity from Montepalizzo, I mean, we don't know. Maybe they did not. Maybe they were uniconic. We don't know.
Yeah.
But it's so many questions.
Yeah, and ISIS was around, but ISIS really did not go crazy until it got even closer to Greek and Roman time in Egypt.
Yeah.
So like even like still later than the time period that we're talking about, the Archaic period in Sicily is 26th dynasty, so middle-ish, late-ish of the late period. And the late period's all complicated because, at least in Egypt, because the Persians take it over twice and lots of different stuff. But ISIS is slowly ramping up in this period, but it really reaches a height once, quite literally, in and around the Greek period in Egypt. The Greeks are like, we're gonna take this everywhere.
We like her.
Yeah, we like her and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So it's
but the early would be difficult to prove.
Yeah, for sure.
Not impossible, but difficult to prove.
Paranoid has another one as well.
Ooh, do you ever have more insights about the meaning of the objects or something handed down in family tradition that's gonna be on assumptions?
Yeah.
We don't know. It's so difficult to figure it out. Even trying to figure out if these things were actually like meaningful. Like even if you tell people, well, these people were buried with them and they hang around their neck, you'll still find people say, well, that doesn't mean that they believe they were amulets. So it is very difficult. If they were passed down, maybe it's possible. But the problem with
Yeah.
objects being passed down is that we don't know what the gap between when the object was produced and where the object was deposed in the context which
Yeah.
we found looked like, right?
Yeah.
Because a thing that is like 2 generations earlier than a 6th century tomb may have been imported 2 generations earlier, or it may have been imported 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
Right?
Yeah. It's impossible to be able to figure it out based on that, because like usually, especially scarabs are usually great indicators of telling us time periods, because at the least, if it's got the name of a pharaoh on it, you say, okay, well, this could not have been made until that pharaoh was born and was ruling.
Was alive.
But if we're
And
talking
then-
about not in Egypt, one, you always have to add the literal shipping time, the shipping time of that piece, which could be shorter, could be longer. But then you also have to assume, well, what if it was hand-me-down in Egypt for a couple generations and then sent over? So all it's going to give you is it's only going to give you the latest date that it could possibly be made based on the name alone. All right, there is an ad. Breaking in 23 seconds.
I'm trying to look for the Ushabtis with the names, with the Egyptian names. I would have to open the file again, but it's like, yeah, there's a Teti. There's like one was a female singer in one of the temples of Amun.
Oh, cool.
So there is that. Yeah. And then it's like several will like shine the Osiris and then very Egyptian name, and you're like,
Yeah, and that's I actually had somebody reach out to me via TikTok asking they're apparently a natural history like consultant or something, and he was consulting for a group, and he found a box labeled fossils, and in the box was something that looks like a Shabti. And so he was like, can I send you a picture? And I was like, I am in no way, I cannot authenticate this, but I will at least tell you that if you go and ask somebody at the museum, they're not going to laugh at you. And I looked at this picture and I was like, it looks like a Shabti, but it doesn't have any inscription or any paint on it. But
not unusual.
Not unusual. And I'm gonna say, like,
could have been glazed.
It's just like it doesn't have any like indication that it had any carvings or any paint on it or whatever. But it's not the worst one I've ever seen. Like, it was enough to tell this person essentially, if you take this to a museum to get it authenticated, I'm hoping they're not going to laugh at you and saying it's a fake, because I think it looks pretty good. They should, hopefully they don't. Hopefully they don't. But yeah, it was very funny that it was in a fossil box for a totally other side thing. but I mean, if you see one, like, honestly, if I saw a terracotta one, which can be rare depending on the time period in Egypt, like, I probably wouldn't be able to tell if it was made in Sicily or in Egypt, just like unless I knew that, like,
you don't want to see them. They're ugly.
They're ugly. Yeah, I was gonna say there are some very ugly Egyptian Shabtis, especially those early like wooden ones. It's just a stick.
Oh,
it's just a stick. It doesn't even have a face. It's just a stick.
Hey,
like,
listen, some of these like flute players, you look at them and you're like,
the little double flute guys. Yeah,
you're like, no.
Exactly. And Friend at Arms, absolutely. Yeah, doing any sort of dating.
It's also destructive.
Yeah, it's also destructive.
It's destructive. They're small and they're very brittle. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
For the Heartstones, maybe, but like with faience, it's so difficult.
No.
And actually, there is a very interesting 2016 study made by a bunch of people, some from the British Museum, some from other places, that shows that a lot of pieces that were assumed to be from Necratis are actually from Rhodes, and the other way around. So we cannot really assign them based on style because molds travel.
I was gonna say, yeah,
people move.
That's true as well. Value is so hard, Paranoid, and I'll ask you this because I'm assuming, is there coinage in the Archaic period?
No.
Yeah. No.
Well, I mean,
not good enough
the
that
later part of the Archaic period, yes, but
Yeah.
very early coinage, not really. 8th century coins, no.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of these tribes, these ethnic groups are not using coins.
Yeah. So that's the thing.
Also, value is
It's I hate to say it, this is so hard in Egypt too. Like in Egypt,
Yeah.
they didn't have coins. It's a bargaining thing. So it's
Yeah.
it almost is dependent
Yeah.
on the person and what the other person has to offer. So
Yeah. And also, like, you would need, like, to identify, like, the value of, like, a scarab in Archaic Sicily, you would need, like, I don't know, like a roll with, like, oh, we sold this for this much, we sold that for
Exactly.
this much. We don't have any of that. We don't have any of that. No, they would have written it on, like, you know, like ostraca or like maybe papyrus if they had the scrap of papyrus, but like that's not stuff that survives, unfortunately. It would have been very interesting. Also, yes, you know, value is what they convince you is valuable. Price is objective, value is subjective. But I think that from the context in which these objects were found, we can infer that they had value. That we can do. That we can absolutely do. But we cannot quantify, right? We can say they were valuable socially because, hey, good night. Because of where they were found and with what other objects they were found. But we cannot quantify how much, you know, oh, hey, how much is a scarab? We don't know, unfortunately.
Anything that is
idea,
being buried, truly, I feel like anything that is being buried because of some sort of value. Because, to be honest, in a world where I am sure they could have used that stuff in their daily life. If somebody dies, I'm sure all of their possessions could be used, because a lot of things were being made for multiple uses and for as long as it possibly can be. So if they're sacrificing it,
if you want to be very performative, in our sanctuary, this is like not like a funerary thing, but like in our sanctuary, so there is a secondary deposition. So when you have too much shit in a sanctuary, you cannot throw it away because it's sacred. So you make a hole in the sacred ground and then put the stuff in there. All of the spears had been ritually killed. They've been bent.
Okay.
So they cannot be reused, right?
Yeah.
And that is very performative. In tombs, they're not bent. Like, it's very rare to find ritually killed things in tombs. But in sanctuaries, yes, because they belong to the gods.
Yeah.
If they belong to grandma, we may still get in and reuse them. But if they belong to the gods, we don't. Like, heaven forbid.
Yeah, inflate the value by declaring it's good enough to be buried. No, because it's absolutely true. It's like if they think, and on the Egyptian side of it is the mindset of the Egyptians is that they are going to wake up in the afterlife and they are going to need to work, they are going to need to eat, they are going to need to sleep. So you're gonna need all this stuff. So why wouldn't you be buried with everything and anything that you are going to need, including food? Like, you can't get food in the afterlife. You gotta either get buried with it, or your family's gotta bring it your living family has to bring it to you. So it's like everything that is going to be in their tomb has some sort of sentimental value, whether it is like Tutankhamun has like his baby shoes, like things like that are purely sentimental. Babies. He also has his babies. Yes,
he
sentimental.
Also has his actual babies.
He also has his actual babies. Yes.
This is so sad.
It's so goddamn sad.
It's like, wow, yeah, that has a sentimental value.
Sentimental value. But then he's also got like over 100 walking sticks. Why does he need over 100 walking sticks? That's my favorite part. Is like people who argue that they're like, he didn't have a club foot. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't care what it is, a club foot, whatever. You don't get buried with over 100 walking sticks and not have a problem with your feet. Like,
exactly.
What's the point? Exactly.
No, because they were all used.
Yeah, exactly. You don't get there's no point of getting buried with a walking stick if you're gonna maybe need it in the future. You need it.
Exactly. No. You do need it. He
Christmas
got them
every
for
year.
Christmas every year. Yeah, his father, who was definitely Akhenaten,
Definitely
was a
Akhenaten,
lousy dad. Definitely Akhenaten.
Yeah, he
not
didn't give his.
Smenkhare.
He definitely didn't give his sons good presents for Christmas. No, definitely
No,
not.
no, definitely not. Definitely not. Well, that was my next question. Who's Tutankhamun's daddy?
It's
Who
always
is the man
It's Akhenaten.
in that coffin?
It's Akhenaten. I
So-
like. I don't. When it comes to the Amarna period, I don't go. I don't have any crazy crackpot theories. I'm just like, I
No,
go with what
no.
just makes most sense.
Yeah. It makes sense that he was the daddy, and that Nefertiti is Nefertiti.
Yeah, I do. I am along with that one too. I think that one makes
Yeah.
the most logical sense because
Right?
there's
Why
a
would it
pretty
have to
good
be
theory
very
that
Tothan?
it also is a pretty good theory that the reason why Tutankhamun stayed a couple years in Amarna was because Nefertiti was still alive and potentially trying to
And they were
perpetuate the
co-regents.
religion because she
Yeah.
was really
Yeah,
a
fair.
good supporter and that they did not leave, that essentially all of the people who were like, I'm gonna tell this 10-year-old what to do, they can't do it until she's gone. Like there's some
Right.
things about
Okay.
ancient Egypt that I'm just like, can we all go with some just common sense? Like, it's a whole Cleopatra
Right.
thing for me that it's like, can we just think of some common sense that probably she never got buried in her tomb? Like, I put that out on TikTok and there were so many people in the comments being like, I literally never thought about that, or that makes so much sense. Like, how would she ever get actually buried when she's being surrounded by the Romans? I'm like, yeah. Just sometimes just think about common sense
Think
for a little
about
bit.
that. Think about
Yeah.
that. Right? And like, would they really want to create a monument for like, well,
Well, my whole thing is that are we looking for Cleopatra's burial or are we looking for her tomb? Because if she was,
Right.
as a typical Egyptian person would, she'd start building her tomb when she was really young. So there is probably
Yeah.
somewhere a structure that was supposed to be her tomb. Did she
there
actually get
was
buried
the
there?
whole complex with the Ptolemies,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So she's probably there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, surely, if you know that it's a scene, surely you're going to like, well, you're not going to destroy her body because if the word gets out,
Yeah.
it's
See,
gonna
that's
be a
my
fucking
that's
mess.
my only
But
thing
you're
is
gonna do
that if they did destroy her body, we would know about it because the Romans would brag about
Yeah,
it
we
so
would know
much.
about
And so
it.
that's my only
Absolutely.
That's my only
So, like,
okay, maybe she did get buried somewhere else, but
Inconspicuous mummification, inconspicuous burial,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, exactly.
Keep it on the low, keep it on the low down. Is she with the Ptolemies? Is she not? People don't need to know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't care. Love
There
that.
was one question. When does written record of trade start? First known example. From this area,
as early as writing.
yeah, as early as writing. Well, I hate to say it. There's some sort of phrase that people use. Why?
Even before writing, probably.
Well, it's why did languages started because of there's something people have always told me that it's like people started writing things down because they were trading, like or in recording things. So like the earliest
Yeah, it makes
Egyptian
sense.
hieroglyphs are small little tags that were labels on pottery in a tomb for a king. And so they were just small little pieces that were just saying, this group gifted the king this wine or something. And that's the first kind of writing. It's like, I think it's, cuneiform was invented for keeping records. Exactly. It's all
There's also
records.
argument
and
that
trade.
knowing how to count is literacy. Even if you don't know how to read, but you know how to count is literacy. And I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Because counting is hard.
It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, you ask me. I can't
It's like,
count for shit.
I have to count on my fingers. I can't do math in my head.
Couldn't
Like,
be me.
come
Yeah,
on, man.
I'm like-
1, 2, yeah. But yeah, so between this time period, I'm sure there are some records. Unfortunately, the late period's a little fishy with there's not as many
For the
many
Greek
good
period,
records.
For Sicily, we don't even have records about the Greek cities in the 8th century BCE. Like written stuff starts later. We have material culture and everything else. Inscriptions later.
Writing
That's
is
the
really
problem.
hard because in Egypt it's on papyrus. Ostraca are more preserved because they're pieces of stone or they're pieces of pottery. And and when the papyrus is so hard to preserve, and it really depends on the environment that you find it in. The only reason that it's pretty well preserved in Egypt is because it's so dry there. In other places in the Mediterranean, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes very
Exactly. Alas.
hard. Alrighty. Any other questions for Dr.
Several
Kate?
sips of water.
Yes. Hydrate yourself. Hydrate or dihydrate. But yeah, this is
I would
so
also
interesting.
like to point out that nobody has come home yet, so the Ethernet cable is still
Yes, yes. That was just so interesting because I know so little about both like Sicily and Italy. Like I know more about Greece than I do about Rome, and neither of those are pretty high in comparison. And I also am so bad at understanding what time periods are occurring at the exact same time in two different places, which I think is a downfall of Egyptology, because they don't say, oh, this is the blah 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 dynasty, which is in the Bronze Age. Nobody tells
Which
you
is
that.
in blah blah. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
no idea.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the first fixed date that we have is because of the Assyrians.
Yeah. No, I know.
So
Because I did learn those. I did learn like the Bronze Age and the Iron Age when I did like archaeology of the Levant and stuff. But like nobody decided to like connect those two together. So I was very grateful when you said 26th dynasty. I was like, okay, good. Like I'm looking at that.
Yes.
I'm looking at that BC, and I'm like, that's not quite yet at Greece, but I don't know if that's still New Kingdom. And I'm like, somewhere. Yeah. So
no. Yeah.
it's so hard.
It's strongly 26th.
Yeah.
So 27th and 26th.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah,
the
that's a very interesting because I love thinking about things like that. Like I was very surprised to find out about the Senate boards, that there are more Senate boards outside of Egypt than there are inside, and that's just wild to me because
today I learned, and we also got reading recommendations.
Reading recommendations,
We
absolutely.
exchanged reading recommendations, and the chat was great.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Some really great questions, and yeah, this was amazing. This was a great. Everyone, give applause. I have a sound for this, if I remember. There we go. Yay!
Well, thank you for having me. This was an absolute treat.
It was so much fun. Definitely follow. Let's do a shout out. If I remember how to do that.
Yeah. Oh, shout out the Savention studies.
Yes, let's do that.
I almost never stream on my own channel, but I'm always trolling chats. I'm often found in other people's chats.
Yeah, so
But
go
we do
follow
Save Ancient
SASA, Save Ancient Studies, Save Ancient Studies Alliance. Oh, I just realized I spelled ancient wrong on this label on the stream. I forgot the E. That's fine. Whatever.
It's fine. It's fine.
But yeah.
That's us.
Definitely check out Save Ancient Studies. They do a lot of really cool things over on Twitch. Their website. If you guys are interested in working, they offer lots of internships, volunteering and such. Please head over there and check them out, because they're doing a lot of really great work on a lot of different fronts, talking about but all parts of the ancient world as well, not just Egypt.
And we just finished a long campaign in which we collapsed the Bronze Age. We were
Amazing.
playing Total War Pharaoh, and
Yes, Total War Pharaoh. You collapsed the Bronze Age. I love it. Great.
we collapsed the Bronze. We were the collapse. Is it me? Am I the collapse?
Am I the collapse of the Bronze Age?
Maybe I am.
Maybe
Yes,
I am.
I am.
I love that so much.
Exactly. We collapsed everything, so it was great.
Who are you playing as mainly?
We played as the champion. We were, and their gods are Etruscans.
Oh
but their
my
names
God.
are Sardinian or Etruscan. It was a lot.
It's a
It was
lot.
a lot of fun. Thank you, chat.
That's a lot.
And we were wearing horns on our helmets.
Oh
because
my gosh.
We were the sea people.
The sea peoples. That is so much fun. But yeah, I
It was
can't wait to
great.
see
That's
what
a
you
great
guys
game.
do. When I came on that stream with you guys, I was like, there's a lot going on. It was like the perfect way, because I knew people did ask me. They were like, are you gonna play this game? And I'm like, I don't think I have the mental capacity to do it. So like, this is the best way for me to play this game, is to be a guest and just watch the chaos of what's going on, and I don't actually have to play it, because it looked like a lot.
that's-
That would have
It is a
genuinely
lot, it's a
taken
lot.
me it genuinely would have taken me multiple streams to even figure out what was going on. Genuinely.
Yeah. It's not an immediate game, but if you're there to give your hot takes and talk about dogs with people who at least one person who knows what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I could talk about dogs all day. But yeah, this sounds like I would love to see this as a publication. I mean, you're definitely kind of inspiring me to potentially work on mine as a, I don't know if I could ever do a publication. What I would really, really love to do, this is like a pipe dream of mine. I want to make a website where researchers, grad students, anyone can create their own databases or corpuses.
Oh, it would be so
I need somebody to back me on this. I need a computer engineer. I need someone to back me on this because I want my research to be accessible, but I don't have the time or kind of mental energy to like actually like write a book of it. Like I would rather just like publish but I also want it to change. Like
you don't just need a computer engineer. You need a grant. You need an NEH grant.
Yeah, but I need a computer engineer to figure out the computer stuff. But yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, one thing at a time. Find a computer engineer, and then
Ludo, we gotta talk because I found one. Yeah. There's a website called Catalog It, if you've ever heard of it. It is what my friends worked at a really small museum, and that was where they hosted their collection database. And technically it seems that it was made for small museums as well as like family collections. Like if your family had like historic on a genealogical sense, like historic pieces that you could kind of put it into a catalog. And I've always wanted to be able to like put all of my stuff there, but I have so many. I have over 500, which means I would have to pay for a certain amount. And then I was just like, I remember I emailed them being like, so what happens if I can't pay my monthly thing? Like, does it just go away? And he didn't really have a good answer for me. And so I really want, it's like a pipe dream of mine, and it sounds so niche, but I feel like a lot of different fields could use something like this. But Ludo, we should talk. And I was gonna say, somebody else mentioned it earlier too. I think it was Dapper Historian. We should talk about this because I would just like, I think it would be great because, he goes to do like that. It's the size of a scarab. Yeah, it just wasn't it was just like it was a very vague answer. It didn't really say yes or no. And I was just like, but what if I can't pay because I'm a lowly grad student? But yeah, I want to be able to do something like that because I think it would be very helpful for people. Because honestly, even when I created mine, one of my friends, when she was in the next year after me, she created one. It was much smaller, but she was like, how did you do it? And I was like, I mean, I can show you my Excel spreadsheet, but it's kind of ugly. Like, I need to reorganize it very badly. But like having something like that has a lot of capabilities for people to make, even if it's not a whole, like they can choose to make it public or not, just something to host all their research and such. Yes. Because you and me, I can tell we have very similar minds, which I was kind of made fun of in grad school because of mine, because mine was an art history master's, and so everyone else was very, I'm gonna interpret all this and it's gonna be all, and I'm like, no, I just want to find every single, I want the numbers. I made charts, I made all of the because of mine, because it still had to be art historical, all of my dogs were separated by types, so like by, this is a figurine, this is a this, and then family scenes versus offering scenes versus hunting scenes versus animal scenes, and like all of this stuff. So like that was the only way, that was as much art historical as I could get. I divided by type. Yeah, exactly.
Type of object.
Yeah.
Easier. And then sites in alphabetical order. No, sites in chronological order.
Oh, and chronological is good too. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing
in my database, but in the dissertation, sites in alphabetical order.
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing that I will ask you is if you could graciously send me any and all museums that any of your pieces are in, because I have a giant Google map where I put every single museum that has any Egyptian things. And if any of those are like small little museums in Sicily, I would love to add them to that Google sheet.
Plenty.
Perfect. Love it.
Yes, remind me tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll send you an email.
And I will, because I have the names of all the museums. I actually have a spreadsheet.
I was gonna say, it's one of my other favorite things is that I have the goal to go to every single museum that has Egyptian things in it, and so I just made a giant Google map, and it's just there, and all color-coded, and so I gotta add more.
Plenty.
Because there are so many little museums that don't have websites and don't have collections online that I couldn't search if they had Egyptian objects, so
Our lab is in the same building as the small local museum.
There you go.
There's no website.
Yeah, there you go.
Would
love that.
I will send you that. Remind me tomorrow.
Yeah,
because I'm gonna
I'll send.
forget, but yes.
No problem. I'll send you an email. Thank you so much, Dr. Kate. Thank you so much. We have to do this again. If you have any other topic you want to talk about,
yes, please.
Absolutely.
I am the leading expert on Egyptian monsters in video games.
Oh, then we have to do another one of these. I'm planning a lot
Once I'm back from excavations.
Yes, absolutely. I'm planning a lot of things in the works for October, International Archaeology Month, and so I'm hoping to get like some like archaeology one, like a whole larger panel with multiple people, and I would love to get like maybe an archeo gaming one as well. So like I'm planning lots of things. Planning lots of things for October.
You know where to find us.
Yay!
You know where to find us. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you so much, guys. All right, we're going to say goodbye to Kate, and then we will go and find somebody to go and raid. So, goodbye. It was so nice to talk to you.